Hello and welcome to Rough Cut Film Review. This is a review of the film ParaNorman, which will be shortly out on DVD. So ParaNorman is a animation, primarily a kids film, in which Norman can see paranormal stuff, so he can see ghosts and the like. So ParaNorman, as such, he's an outsider because his parents don't understand him. His older sister, who's pretty cool, doesn't understand him, and he gets bullied and all this sort of thing. So at the heart of the story actually is a nice and reassuring tale about being an outsider, learning to accept oneself, and how bullying is fairly inevitable. There was a line, something along the lines of, if you were bigger and stupider, you'd probably be a bully yourself, which is quite a nice sentiment when you think about it, really, from the point of view of the people getting bullied, at least. So in there we've got this, plot-wise, we've got this Billy Shakespeare contrivance of the play within a play. So we've got school production of a local legend of a witch's trial and her revenge on the local townspeople. But of course it turns out that the witch is real, her anniversary is approaching, and she plans to raise the dead. And it falls to Norman to stop her after the death of a local hobo, played by John Goodman, who is keeping her in her grave. So there's an interesting parallel between Norman and the witch, who are essentially both misunderstood outsiders who happen to be born at different times. And the moral of the story is very much along the lines of acceptance, not being afraid, and forgiving. It's directed by a duo, and unlike my review of Wreck, I've actually double-checked my sources. So in my review of Wreck, I kept talking about the director, but it wasn't. It was directed by that guy's name I couldn't pronounce, and also some bloke called Pablo, which I can pronounce. So, ParaNorman. Both directors have their backgrounds in animation, so between them they've made Flushed Away, The Corpse Bride and Coraline. So ParaNorman isn't exactly a stretch for them, but it is well shot. The backgrounds and textures aren't as detailed as the real top tier, so something like a Toy Story 3, but the animation is all absolutely fine, and it's packed with little adult related references. So for example, Norman's mobile ringtone is the music from The Exorcist. So obviously this is primarily a kids film, but in the manner of things, since Shrek, I think that was probably the watermark, there's got to be a fair amount in there for the adults as well as the kids. So there's going to be a load of stuff that the adults pick up on that the children will be utterly oblivious to. And I think that's actually, in a sense, a bit of a shame, really, because when I think back, to Hollywood family films, and when I see the idea of a concept of a family film, I get slightly worried. But if I think back, there was this idea of watching a film where mum, dad and the kids would all enjoy a film for all exactly the same reasons, and they will laugh along together. Whereas today, if you get a kids film like this, there'll be a kids story, and then there'll be little bits and pieces, sort of like Easter eggs for the adults to find that the kids aren't able to do, so it'll go over their heads. And I think that's actually a little bit of a shame that they're splitting the audience that way, but there we are. So ParaNorman is actually quite a mature film, not in the sense of the horror plot, because it's a very light horror plot, but in the sense that it deals with issues such as fear, bullying, so it's stuff that kids face every day. It's pretty grown up. Some of the more interesting stuff comes from the actual townspeople themselves. So they realise that the zombies are rising, the dead are rising from their graves, and their attitude is more akin to the final shots of Night of the Living Dead, rather than being terrified and locking themselves into their houses. So that they're up for it. So the film does actually lack a big name star, which some of the probably more expensive animations these days have, but the quality of the acting all round is of a very high standard, and it does have people like John Goodman in it, in a little role. So that's all very well done. I think the most fun character for me was the protagonist's intolerant dad, who's played by one of my favourite comedic actors, Jeff Garlin, who you'll know as Jeff from Curb Your Enthusiasm. I think he's absolutely fantastic. So they've made a good fist of this. It's nothing radical in most regards, and it's not up there with the very best of the genre. So I mean, Pixar are at really the top of their game, but it's perfectly acceptable animation. I'd recommend this for kids and adults who do enjoy the Coralines of this world. if you're an adult who's a bit sniffy about watching kids animation, then this is not going to change your mind. But I thought it was absolutely fine, and I do enjoy them from time to time. In terms of watching it with kids, I suppose there's some mild peril in there, as the BBFC used to say, and unfortunately they realise that that's a stupid thing to say now. So tragically, you don't have mild peril written on the report of something. Perhaps young kids might find this a little bit scary, because there's an evil witch and some fairly comical zombies, but I do find it quite difficult to appreciate that, because as an 8-year-old I had a VHS copy of John Carpenter's The Thing, and I used to watch Freddy Krueger and such, so I'm not the best judge of what's scary and what's not for little kids, but I would imagine this would be absolutely fine. So there we are. So there's ParaNorman. It was a decent film, and does what it says on the tin. Thanks very much.